Good evening, paranormal peeps. That's right. I'm calling you paranormal peeps from here on in. Jason Hewlett here, Paranormal Network manager, um, bringing back Tracey Bach, psychic, who's joined us on a few shows now. Tracy, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, and I'm really excited to have you here because this week we are talking about something you know a little bit about. Not that you didn't know anything about other subjects. This is your thing, right? This is psychic phenomena, and I think it's a hot topic within the paranormal, because it's one that a lot of people sort of turn to for help and support. Law enforcement does the exact same thing in certain cases. So I want to you to at first share your story. Like how did you discover these abilities and how did you decide to cultivate them to help other people?
Sure. Yeah. So it's one of those things that it's like an age-old story with a lot of psychics or intuitives or mediums. I kind of always knew that I had gifts of knowing things where I probably shouldn't know them, like from 4 or 5, 6 years old. Wasn't really accepted. I wasn't really mentored all that well growing up in that realm. And it was kind of growing up with a religious background. It was kind of a little bit frowned upon. So, once I got to school, I kind of shoved it down because not all my friends knew the shit I knew, excuse my language, but they didn't know stuff, right? They didn't know. And so I was like, we all need to fit in, or we all want to feel like we fit in. And so, in my 20s, I got an autoimmune disease, and sort of Western medicine wasn't working for me. Pills and medications and things weren't working. I was still very sick. So I went to what I thought was a Reiki healing. And what it was a Reiki attunement. So I actually learned how to do it. So I took my level 1, took my level 2, started doing it, volunteering at hospice for the people that were dying or in chronic pain. And that's when it all came back again. And so basically my main psychic ability is clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. So I will get pictures in my head, sometimes sounds, sometimes feelings, and kind of my job as this, meat sack of a being is to figure out what all those crazy things mean to you. And that's the nutshell of what I do.
And that's interesting because I know you're talking about clairvoyance. There's so many other ones like telepathy, like remote viewing. Oh, and Mary, you probably do have that's another question, I guess. Maybe like, does everybody psychic have the ability to tap into that potential? Do you think, Tracy?
1,000,000%. And this is really heartfelt for me because I feel like my job as somebody who maybe has already been able to lean into the intuition, lean into the psychic bit. I really feel like the biggest part of my job is to get you to do the same. Because we're all born, in the caveman days, we had this intuition to keep us alive. We had to know if a saber-toothed tiger was going to come and kill us, right? So we had to be able to interpret esoteric or unseen energy in order to survive. And I think just over the years, we've shut that down. And maybe it's time to bring it back so that we can sort of move through life in a mental way, physical way, and a spiritual way.
There's a writer, Colin Wilson, wrote a book called The Occult back in the 70s, and he was a non-believer. Right. And by the end of the time he finished researching and writing the book, he believed, and he called that ability, he called it Faculty X.
Oh.
And he said the same thing you just mentioned. In the caveman days, we all had it. We use it because you had to survive, right? And it was that sort of intuition that would lead you away from danger, help you find food. And as we've become more established as people and as a society and as a culture, we've turned it off. Not so much turned it off, but it's been drowned out by all the noise around us.
Yeah.
In this society, the internet and stuff like that.
And we don't have to rely on it anymore for survival.
No, but I think a lot, and good evening to Eclipse Midnight and, of course, Marianne. I think, like you say, though, a lot of people are starting to feel that again. I know in the last few years, I've realized myself, I'm very empathic. I can feel things in a room, or if someone's feeling a certain way, I can pick up on it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a common thing, do you think, empathy?
Empathy is very common and very, very hard for the empath. Because basically, I try and explain it to people is that you're feeling things, but it's really hard to distinguish if it's your own stuff. So if it's a pain that's your own, or if it's an emotion that it's your own, I say you meet people throughout the day. Say you meet 100 people, and an empath will take each person's coat and put it on. And so by the end of the day, they're wearing 100 coats. And so It's really hard. It's like, I feel really crappy. I feel drained. I feel heavy. Well, it's because Yeah. The empath is basically what we would call a clairsentient. They feel in the body, or they feel emotionally. And it's really hard to figure out, is that yours? Is that yours? Whose is it? Yeah.
That's been my struggle the last little while, because like you say, every day I'd be, especially when I was working like out in the professional field as a journalist. I was a crime reporter, and then I did sort of social work after that. And you take on everybody's stuff, and it was hard to tell what I was feeling and what other people were feeling at the same time. And so it's I guess let's let's pick your brain for some advice then, as someone who is empathic. How do you stop that? Or how do you tune out what's what?
Yeah, it's practice. And actually, as being an empath, you can use your own body. And so it's like, I'm feeling all this negativity in my body. Let's say I'm feeling, is it mine? And your body will tell you now, right? You'll feel like, okay, I say spiritual allies because I like to use the unseen realm, but is this my feeling? And your body will either shiver, or it'll, like, you'll get a pit in your stomach. And usually a pit in the stomach means it's yes, it is yours kind of thing. And then you can deal with it. So there's techniques of like kind of removing that energy. It's more intention based, but you can go to a healer as well, an energy healer, to remove all that. But basically what I do is I just imagine that I'm washing away anything that doesn't belong to me. It's just it's an intention based thing.
Grounding exercise, I think I've heard of, like, through meditation, right? And just kind of,
for sure. Lots of those things. Now, the tricky part of grounding is where I would say 25% of the population, we talk about grounding, like grounding into the earth. For me, I ground up. So, so when I'm in the earth, I feel very ungrounded. And so for me, a meditation that sort of takes me on a spiritual journey is how I ground. And so 25% of the population, you kind of have to figure out where your poles are, what's north and south. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So digging in the dirt and, digging in the dirt and getting, all that grounding stuff doesn't work for you. Try the other way.
I see that.
Right?
And I never would have thought of up, but you're right, because there's sort of two different ways of feeling, really, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of want to go into the ground, or kind of just feel the energy around you.
Right. Yeah.
Charlotte Collins here saying, I would love to be read to see how close they come. How, in what you do you do readings for people, Tracey? Like, well, if someone needs, so how do you do that? How does that work?
Yeah. So for me, basically someone will come to me, and I only ever want a first name because I just want to have integrity around what I do. And basically I'll tune into what I call your spiritual allies. So your spiritual allies are just divine light beings. They might be called angels, guides, ascended masters, ancestors, past loved ones. I call them the spiritual light team because they're just energy bodies that are not in the seen realm. I kind of tune into them a little bit, I guess I would say, and just ask them what is the most value. And then I'll just get the pictures, I'll get the sounds, I'll get the feelings, and then I'll impart guidance, or actually it's not even guidance, clarity and support is what I do. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm seeing that's going on in your life right now that is needing the most attention. And then we work from there. So for me, I never want to, your spiritual allies and me will never tell you what to do. It's not our job. You have free will, but we might be able to suggest that for your highest good, this might be the path. You're supported no matter what decision you make. This one might have a little easier path. This one might be a little bumpy. All rivers lead to the ocean. So the result is always going to be the same.
That's fascinating. And because there are people that are skeptical about especially with readings, because like we were talking a bit before, people can go on and check out your Facebook profile to get a gist of what's happening, and especially because everyone shares so much on there. Yeah. So what do you say to those people who think that you're kind of doing something that are playing like a, you know what I mean? Like there's that mirroring, like reading people, and then kind of just picking up cues from what they say or don't say, or if, like, dropping a hint to a word. You know what I mean? Like, what do you say to people that think that's what's going on?
Yeah. And that's valid, because I'm going to be honest here. Like, so I know that I have this gift and being able to read energy. And part of that is the physical energy. And so it's a big package. It's not just, tapping into all of this. Skeptics, I love the skeptics, but I will never be challenged in like, you read me because I don't believe in you. I have nothing
Mhm.
to prove to anybody. And so I won't take up the gauntlet with that anymore. But, for skeptics, just go in open, not without an attachment to the outcome. And maybe you might hear something that would, one little nugget that might support you in having a more easeful life.
Hang on, we're getting some interesting comments here. I know what that's like. It's hard for me. I can feel others' emotions on top of my own. I actually know when my son's sick because I can feel it. You're both amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know my son got his vaccine yesterday, his first dose of vaccine, and he's doing good, but he's on a low, and I can feel
Yeah,
that
you
low
feel it.
today, right within him, sort of thing.
Well, I
It's
mean, just the
interesting.
proof for parents in the world about sort of psychic ability. Like we all know the parents' intuition, right?
Mhm.
We use it every day, whether our kid is, if they come home from school, and part of it is body language, but part of it is just an energetic sort of low. You can feel it. And so we all have this ability, but yeah, the empaths, most of us are empathic to some degree. The ones that use it for their psychic guidance the most are the ones that I love them. I love you empaths so much, but yes, it is hard to walk this planet.
Kyle Ferguson saying, "Hi, guys. Hey, Kyle, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight." Um, do you think that the phrase psychic or psychic phenomena maybe puts like a stigma on it automatically? Like if
Yeah.
people said intuition more, people are like, oh yeah, everyone can trust their gut, right? Cops use it, like it's
Yeah, medical professionals use it. Yeah, we all have intuition. It's funny because when I first started doing this as a business, I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to put intuitive consultant or that's going to be my label." And then I was like, "No, because I am a psychic." And so words have vibration just because of old trauma. So maybe the witch trials, maybe like all of this sort of perhaps in history misogynistic sort of oppression of the female gifts, because a lot of nurturing and being open is attributed to female. Psychic became a bad word, and maybe religiously as well. And so I do call myself a psychic because I'm like, I'm going to change the vibration of that word. And we all have an inner psychic.
We got a comment here from Kelly. It drives me crazy to pick up emotions. I do it with my coworkers. I'm medical. So like in the medical profession, Kelly, yeah, that would be tough, especially in this current climate, to pick up on all those feelings and emotions.
Terrible. There are techniques too to sort of protect yourself. So you can do some vision around that about like, I'm going to surround myself with this beautiful white kind of rubber ball that I can see through. And any of the emotions that are low vibe or not for my highest good will bounce off gently and go back to their original intended people. So, it's just more about visualization and clearing and things like that. It will help. But yeah, that's a tough, low vibe place to be. So God bless you.
One thing too, like you hear people refer to themselves as psychic mediums. I've always understood that that's two different things. Is that true? Like there's psychic and mediumship? Because mediumship, from what I understand, is sort of the ability to communicate more with spirit. You know what I mean? Like bring a spirit into you and have them speak through you. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. Now,
Okay.
not, yeah, kind of. It depends who you ask, to be honest. Mediumship has been the new definition, or the common definition, is somebody who speaks to dead people, somebody that
Mhm.
has walked on this planet. They speak to them. And so I have that ability as well. It happens, I don't plan on it to happen all the time, but it will. Past loved ones will often come through in a reading. But they don't take over my body. And so I think that you're thinking about more that physical mediumship or trance mediumship,
Mhm.
where basically your consciousness is removed, and then the consciousness of the being that wants to be channeled enters the body. And that's where you'll see voice changes. You'll see some weird movements, things like that. I'm way too much of a control freak to even attempt that. It's a little bit scary for me.
Well, and that was very popular. I know, like sort of in the Victorian era, they'd have whole
Yes.
seance parties, and then in the there's that very big spiritual movement, that Hans Holzer was a part of, like during the 60s and the 70s. And when he investigated, he used only spirit mediums as a paranormal investigator.
Right.
He refused to. He says you're not a credible investigator unless you do, right? Which I think is interesting how that's changed, because I know when Peter Wren and I investigate with our organization, we tend not to use psychics
Yeah.
very often because in Peter's mind, and I kind of agree, we don't want to have that opinion influence what we're trying to investigate. When we've used psychics, we've kind of investigated first, then brought a psychic in to see if they can back up our findings.
Yeah.
Do you
it's
use
interesting how
do
it's
you
flipped.
use yours like when you invest? Because I know you're sort of newer to the team.
Yeah.
Do you use yours in investigations, like actual? Yeah.
Yeah. It's my compass. It's my compass. So more about just feeling the energy, which I'm sorry, I gotta call you on this one. Both you and Peter have this, right? You walk in as an empath, that's a psychic at some level, right? And so you get feelings about, oh, I should go put a REM pod there, or we should, do measurements of temperature here. Both you and Peter have that gift. So it's not that you don't use them, you just don't want to rely on them for information before. And so that's where I think I come in. I still love using equipment, physical equipment, but I also kind of use my psychic bit to figure out, try and feel the energy and know where to investigate from there.
That's interesting. Saffron, we've been talking a lot, Saffron.
All about you.
That's right. Definitely good vibes. I find I'd use it, like, you're right. Like, there's a bit of that intuition, like you say, and knowing where to place a REM pod, what questions to ask at what time, partly based on the research that you've done. I know when I was a journalist, what I was really good at is if I needed to find someone to talk to for a story, I could really find people. And it would be, say, something like there'd been a break-in or a crime committed somewhere. And usually you'd go to the location, try to find people to talk to. And I'd sit for quite a while at my desk and kind of write on other stuff. And my sitting here would get really frustrated, but I'm like, just wait. And I would know, suddenly be like, okay, get up, you got to go now. And I'd go to the location. I'd always find that person to talk to very, very quickly at that point. And I'd be like, oh, wow, you found a great person and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, it was the right time to go.
Like, and how does that happen? That's just an intuition, right? I love it. So that in a paranormal investigation, I think psychics definitely have value. So for me, does the REM pod or the EMF or the K2 meter or anything, does it validate this, the presence of spirit any more than a psychic having information? Does it? Like, really, it's not. It's all just kind of electricity. Electricity is unseen as well, so I
guess, and this is not maybe the right way to approach it, I guess, because it's not scientifically tested equipment either, but you're trying to, some investigators want to take a more science to get the science to pay attention, kind of, or using more of a scientific method. But I mean, science doesn't look at a REM pod as being valuable either. So like
that there's so many institutes for the study of psychical science.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Right? It's kind of, we're in a very muddy profession, Tracey.
There we go.
Is it weird that my son says Nana and points to a corner and laughs, and I sense a comforting feeling? Or is it weird that I knew I was going to have my son, which he was born at 35 weeks back on 12/12/20?
Ooh, goosies.
I know, right?
It's nothing weird about it. So I always say that the young, so the babies and the elderly that are maybe in their dying phase of life, are the closest to source or that universal life force energy. And so they're in sort of a vulnerable and open spiritual place. Of course, they're going to see more. The babies haven't, the world hasn't told them that they're not psychic. They haven't told them they're not supposed to see this stuff. And the old people are just vulnerable and open and knowing that they're transitioning into the next thing. And that's when spirit often will appear to help that journey. Yeah. So no, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not weird at all. I want to take psychic intuition and all of that out of the weirdness zone and put it into the normal zone.
Which it kind of needs to be. And I think along with, as conversations we've had over the course of this show, like we call it paranormal just because we can't understand it yet. But I think it's a very natural part of our world. Right. It just scares people a bit. Yeah. And like you say, that like mainstream science and culture just still doesn't want to embrace it because it means there's a whole lot more going on than what we think's going on in our world.
Yeah, we like to be controlled.
Yeah.
Like not of our own destiny. And there's a component of, well, if this is truly happening, I don't have control. So
exactly. And that terrifies, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah.
As someone like yourself, what advice would you give to people who are looking to turn to a psychic for help? Because I know there are those out there who are taking advantage of people and are making a lot of money who don't have a talent or an ability for it. Right. Con artists, etc.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people who are looking for someone to recruit someone like yourself? What are some things they should look for or not look for?
Right. So I always say the best person, like if you have a trusted friend, word of mouth, like testimonials are the best for my business. I started out with very few clients and now I have them all over the world just by word of mouth. I actually don't even have a web page yet. And so really also trusting your gut. One thing you want to look for is making sure that they're not giving you bad news. Like, so it's hard until you're in it, but somebody that doesn't charge thousands of dollars. I mean, I think there has to be a charge associated with it, but when it's thousands of dollars and you have to pay up front for a service you haven't got yet. I always say go with a psychic that somebody recommends. For me would be the starting place. And, if when you're in the reading or when you're in the space with the psychic, if you get any weird vibes at all, just cut it off. Like cut it off and be like, you know what? I'm not feeling this. This doesn't feel safe. Whatever your words are, my baby's crying. I just got a text. I have to go get out, because it's not every psychic is for everybody. And anytime that they're going to bring in like, oh, I've got some bad news for you. I feel like a sickness coming on. You got to come back to me every week for 6 months and I'll be able to cure you. Well, no psychic can cure you. Well, I mean, people can be cured of things or healed from things, but so just all those cues that you would normally have in sort of any kind of job interview or any time that, used car salesman, health practitioner, journalist, anytime, you want to have, feel confident and just don't give too much information, right? Yeah. If it doesn't feel right, get out.
Which is that's good advice to give, and I think some people don't think so, right? That they should hold on for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Kelly's saying here, I know when my dogs are sick, I swear they tell me, and I've heard there are pet psychics.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that an actual thing?
I used to talk to my dogs when I was little.
Oh,
like psychically, like I would like, not everybody talks to animals. I do not have that ability anymore, but for sure. It's an energetic. So it's another energetic component. Animals also have emotions. Animals have physical pain. Animals have a thought process as well. And I'm going to be really controversial here. Animals have soul. So, they are all just part of the big divine ball of love that we all come from. So yeah, you're picking up on that, either dis-ease of the body or the emotion for sure. Yeah. It's the same, and it's just a refined skill. So somebody that feels that they can feel the energy from an animal, then it's just I call it the psychic dictionary. You just practice until whatever symbols or whatever feelings come up over and over, you know what they mean. It's very consistent with spirit, very consistent. So I have what I consider a psychic dictionary. So for instance, if a spirit shows up holding a baby in a blue blanket, it means that they probably had a miscarriage. Doesn't mean it was a boy or anything, but it's probably they've had a baby that did not survive. So I just know over time, red balloons mean it's the anniversary of a death. So that's sort of, and so everybody can do it, even with pets.
How about dreams? Like that, I've had some doozies lately, it was kind of prompted me to like, and I mean, but are dreams sort of tapping into that psychic ability and helping suss stuff out, or are we even then communicating with the other side during dreams? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, can for sure. It's a very is a beautiful way of our subconscious to communicate with our conscious. It's also a beautiful way of the unseen realm to communicate with you, because we're not like blocked and we're just kind of, our consciousness is kind of at rest. And so yeah, dreams are so cool because they're very metaphoric. And so it takes it, and they're very specific to self. So you can look up the dream interpretation meanings, but it's really specific to you. For me, when I'm getting a message from the other side, it will be a head or a person, and it will be black behind, and there'll be nothing going on other than that person speaking to me. So I know, okay, I better pay attention to what they're saying. But for sure, so many people have prophetic dreams or that come true. It's just another way of the energetic or esoteric world of giving you information to make your life flow a little easier. Yeah.
And it's like you say, it kind of it ties with the question that I put up here in terms of if you keep having these visions, especially having when you dream and it keeps repeating itself to you, it's a matter of trying to untangle that meaning of what those, because dreams are more symbolic than straight up. Or
Mostly.
they can be, right? Like,
yeah, mostly. Yeah, they're very metaphoric. So I don't know if this is dreams, but visions, when I keep having them when you dream and it keeps repeating itself to you, it just means that your subconscious or your light team is trying to get your attention for something. So it's typically of support. It's your light team doesn't want to scare you in any kind of way. So it's really of support and guidance on maybe that's something you have to really think about what's going on in your physical life as well.
mm-hmm.
So then if you're dreaming about something or someone, it's usually related to what's going on in your physical life, some sort of things that you need, crunchy times, some sort of uncomfortable situations that you're getting guidance on around that. It's so fun. Dream interpretation, we can do a whole show about.
Well, and you know what? We'll come back in January and do one because I think that's a value to people, right?
Yeah, so fun.
We've probably only got about 5 or so minutes left, Tracey. You kind of went on. I remember you wanted to help people tap into their inner psychic. I remember you mentioned that on the show, and you mentioned that even when you were talking about coming on the show. So how do people do that here in the few minutes we got left? How can people really tap into that ability that they have, that we all have?
Yeah, really, it's paying attention, and that's so easy and so it doesn't mean anything, but it's more about those times when you think of somebody and then they text, or you think of somebody and you call them and they're like, oh, thank God you called me, like I'm going through a rough time. It's all those little times, then go like, okay, that was my intuition talking. And then there's exercises you can do. So there's cards that you can do, like, take a deck of cards and try and predict if it's a red or black. That just sharpens the sort of prophetic part of psychic. There's just a part that's surrendering to it. So, if you have this hunch that you should take a particular route home, instead of following that hunch, go your normal route and see if there's like a traffic jam or an accident or something. And so sometimes reverse validation makes us open up even more. I think it's just a trust of self. And when you get a knock, I call it a knock or a hit or something, share it. And I think validation of your own intuition. So saying it when you feel uncomfortable saying it to a person, that validation of being right gives you so much more strength. Yeah. But there's lots of exercises. There's tons of exercises for all the clairs, for sure.
I think that's really, this advice you gave there is really good. And hopefully there's this one comment here from Yancy. How do I locate lost items? I lost my engagement ring at home and looked everywhere and it's vanished. Is that a possible thing to do?
Some people can do that for sure. Yeah. So it would be, I would even write before I went to sleep. Thank you, spiritual allies, for helping me to locate my engagement ring. And then go to sleep and see if in the morning, get that book and just write. It's almost like automatic writing. Just write everything and you might get some clues to where it is. I don't know where your engagement ring is.
That's yeah. But we can find it by kind of focusing on it.
I don't know where it is, but I feel like it's tucked behind. It might be in the bathroom, but it might be behind the toilet. So I don't know if you take off your ring when you wash your hands, but it feels like it's jammed somewhere. Maybe it's time to get a bigger and better one. I don't know.
We kind of touched on this a bit earlier in the show, Tracey. I have major anxiety and depression. How do I tell the difference between my emotions and other people's? Maybe you could reiterate that here before we wrap it up.
Yes. Okay. Well, a part of having anxiety is being super empathic. I mean, most empaths have a lot of anxiety. It's how their body talks to them. And so how do you tell the difference between my emotions and other people's? Is the same way that I told Jason, is that ask your body, is this my feeling? And you'll get a response from your body. Either it'll be tingles, chills, pit in the stomach, a neck ache, something like that. And then you'll get a yes or a no answer. But really, you have to calibrate your body first. I know we're going over time here, but calibrating the body of like really working with your body and think of the best, awesomest thing of your life, like the best experience. And where do you feel it in your body? Where does it feel in your body? And so when you're looking for a yes answer or clarity on something, does it feel the same as that feeling that you had when you imagined your perfect day? If not, then it's a no, right? It's that simple. So your body's now calibrated that if you don't have that exact same feeling of your most compelling vision where you feel light and beautiful and warm, and you're asking yourself, should I take this job or not? If you don't have that feeling, it's a no.
And that's fantastic advice. I
you.
think that calibrate, that's a great one. And that's what I've been doing. And it's like, oh, I'm thinking about this decision. I feel very calm about it. This is the right thing to do. But if you're like tormented, it's probably the wrong choice of action, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, you already do it. Well, I told you.
You did. You promised. This is for Yancey. I think it might be here. Look up a prayer for lost item if there's a prayer
It's
out there. It could be.
Saint Anthony, I think. Prayer to Saint Anthony, I think, is the prayer for lost items.
And one more here. Sometimes I think something is wrong with me. I think of a patient, then they call, or worse, I know when someone has passed.
Yeah. Yeah, you can think of like when knowing someone has passed as a bad thing, but maybe we can reframe that for you and flip the script that they obviously had this beautiful connection to you, or you did something that was valuable in their life, and they're saying their last goodbye in a spiritual way. Yeah, nothing's wrong with you. You're perfectly in tune. This is a beautiful gift that you have, and it's not wrong. It's perfectly right.
That's awesome. Tracey, I thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. Please come back in the new year, and we can focus on some specific topics that I think people will really enjoy, like we promised. I'm back next week for the final live hit of 2021 before Christmas, and I'm going to be bringing Jessica Dwyer, who writes and narrates Mytheries, with me to talk about spooky Christmas myths and mysteries. Once again, Tracey, thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who joined me tonight. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, stay spooky.